introduced the theme how great founders don't start with money or luck, but with an idea, vision, and relentless drive. Mention Elon Musk as the case study. Humble beginnings in South Africa. Elon Musk was born on June 28, 1971, in Pretoria, South Africa, into a world that would later seem almost unimaginable compared to the global empire he would go on to build. His father, Elon Musk, was an engineer, while his mother, May Musk, was a model and dietitian. From the outside, it might have looked like a comfortable childhood, but Musk's early years were shaped more by curiosity, imagination, and isolation than by privilege. From a very young age, Musk displayed an almost obsessive fascination with technology and science. He wasn't the kind of kid who fit neatly into the social structures of school life. In fact, he was often bullied, beaten, and ridiculed by classmates who saw him as different. Instead of sports or socializing, Musk found refuge in books, devouring science fiction novels, encyclopedias, and anything he could get his hands on. He didn't just read stories, he absorbed them like blueprints for the future. Authors like Isaac Asimov and Douglas Adams didn't just entertain him, they planted seeds of possibility in his mind. By the age of 10, Musk had discovered computers, a turning point that would change everything. His parents bought him a Commodore VIC-20, an early home computer with barely any memory by today's standards. Most kids would have treated it like a toy. Musk saw it as a puzzle to be mastered. Within days, he was teaching himself programming through a manual. By the time he was 12, he had coded and sold his first video game, Blastar, a simple space shooter. He sold it to a computer magazine for around $500. It wasn't just pocket money, it was proof that his ideas could have real-world value. Life at home wasn't always easy. His parents divorced when he was young, and Elon chose to live with his father, a decision he would later regret, describing it as one of the worst experiences of his life. He rarely talks about those years in detail, but it's clear they left scars. The household environment, combined with the harsh school bullying, forced Musk inward, fueling his reliance on imagination and self-education. In South Africa, opportunities were limited, especially for someone dreaming beyond national borders. The country was still under apartheid, a system Musk disagreed with even as a teenager. He knew early on that his ambitions couldn't be contained within Pretoria or even South Africa as a whole. He saw the United States as the land of innovation, the place where someone like him could turn ideas into reality. This blend of hardship, relentless curiosity, and early technical talent became the foundation of Musk's future. While most kids his age were worrying about fitting in or playing outside, Musk was already training his mind to build, design, and imagine worlds that didn't exist yet. The boy who once hid from bullies in libraries and sat for hours with a computer keyboard in hand was slowly becoming the man who would later redefine multiple industries. Musk's childhood wasn't such glamorous, but it was raw, formative, and quietly powerful. It was in South Africa, through the mix of loneliness, obsession with knowledge, and a stubborn refusal to accept limits, that Elon Musk's journey truly began. First steps into tech. At the age of 12, Elon Musk took his first real step into the world of technology, not as a consumer, but as a creator. This was no small feat for a boy growing up in Pretoria, South Africa, at a time when computers were rare, expensive, and far from mainstream. While most kids were still treating computers like mysterious machines they didn't fully understand, Musk was already bending one to his will. His parents had bought him a Commodore VIC-20, one of the earliest home computers available. The machine had just 5 kilobytes of memory, a laughable number by today's standards, but to Musk, it was a treasure chest of possibility. The VIC-20 came with a programming manual thick with basic code. For most people, it would have been dry, confusing, and overwhelming. Musk devoured it like a novel, learning the entire manual cover to cover in about 3 days. What normally took months for beginners to grasp, he absorbed in less than a week. This obsessive focus wasn't an accident. Musk had already shown signs of being different. He wasn't content with simply playing games. He wanted to know how they worked. How did pressing a key make something move on the screen? How could lines of symbols and numbers turn into spaceships, explosions, or galaxies? These questions drove him, and the answers came through programming. Blaster was the result of that relentless curiosity. The game itself was simple, a space-themed shooter where the player controlled a ship, blasting through enemy vessels loaded with deadly hydrogen bombs and status beam machines. Graphically, it was primitive, even by the standards of the 1980s. But the fact that a 12-year-old boy had written the code entirely by himself was extraordinary. It wasn't a polished product from a gaming studio. It was a raw early glimpse of Musk's ability to transform abstract ideas into functioning systems. Once the game was finished, Musk didn't stop there. He sent the source code to PC and Office Technology, a South African computer magazine. To his surprise, and probably to the astonishment of the editors, his work was published. They paid him around $500 for it. For Musk, this wasn't just about money, though $500 was a significant sum for a 12-year-old in the mid-1980s. It was validation. It was the first concrete proof that his passion could be turned into something real, something valuable. This moment also revealed something about Musk's mindset that would define his entire career. He never stopped at good enough. Many children might have been thrilled just to make a working game. Musk wanted to take it further, to share it, to see if someone else valued it. That instinct, to build, to release, to test the world's reaction, would later drive him in ventures from Zip2 to Tesla to SpaceX. But Blastar also carried symbolic weight. It wasn't just a game about shooting enemy ships. It was a coded metaphor for his imagination. His mind was already thinking beyond Earth, into outer space, into the realm of exploration and science fiction. This was a boy who read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy not as entertainment, but as inspiration. Blastar, though simple, foreshadowed Musk's obsession with space, rockets, and the dream of making humanity a multi-planetary species. In hindsight, Blastar wasn't destined to be a bestseller or a cultural phenomenon. It was clunky and unrefined. And today you can even find its basic version floating around the internet, playable in all its pixelated glory. But that's not the point. The significance of Blastar wasn't in the gameplay. It was in the act of creation. At 12 years old, Elon Musk had already proven that he could turn imagination into execution, code into cash, and curiosity into opportunity. For most kids, 12 is an age of hobbies, fleeting interests, and childhood distractions. For Elon Musk, it was the moment he became a technologist, an entrepreneur, and in his own way, a futurist. Blastar was his first launchpad, not into orbit, but into a lifelong trajectory of building things that others thought impossible, dreaming beyond borders. By the time Elon Musk reached 17, it was already clear that South Africa could never contain him. He was too restless, too ambitious, and too deeply aware that his dreams required a stage far bigger than Pretoria. Musk had always looked westward, toward North America, where Silicon Valley was buzzing with innovation, and where space programs, advanced research, and entrepreneurship were transforming the world. For a teenager raised under the weight of apartheid-era South Africa, with limited opportunities and a government he morally opposed, the decision to leave was as much about survival as it was about ambition. Musk understood early that staying in South Africa would confine him. Military conscription was mandatory, and had he remained, he would likely have been drafted into defending a system he fundamentally disagreed with. He despised the apartheid regime not only for its brutality but also for its stagnation. He saw a future that demanded diversity, open-mindedness, and progress, and South Africa at the time was the opposite. For Musk, leaving wasn't just an option, it was the only way forward. At 17, armed with little more than his determination, a backpack, and a belief that he was destined for something greater, Musk set out for North America. He didn't immediately land in the United States, the country he truly longed for. Instead, he began in Canada. His mother, May, had Canadian citizenship, and through her family roots, Musk was able to secure a Canadian passport. That passport became his ticket out of South Africa. When he arrived in Canada in 1989, Musk had barely any money. Family accounts describe him starting with a few $100s at best. He had no network, no job lined up, and no clear path forward. But what he did have was an unshakable belief that the risk was worth it. For Musk, the unknown was less frightening than the certainty of being trapped in South Africa. Those first years in Canada were far from glamorous. Musk did whatever work he could find, often physically demanding, low-paying jobs. He worked on farms, shoveling grain, cleaned out boilers at lumber mills, and took on odd jobs that paid little but kept him afloat. He once described a particularly grueling boiler cleaning job, where he had to crawl into a narrow, steaming hot tunnel filled with toxic residue. Few people could stand the conditions for more than half an hour. Musk endured it for hours because he needed the paycheck. It was a humbling experience that contrasted sharply with the world-changing ambitions he carried in his head. Yet even in those struggles, Musk was plotting his future. Canada was never the destination. It was the stepping stone. He enrolled in Queen's University in Ontario in 1990, seeing education as the bridge to the opportunities he sought in the United States. Queen's was also where he would meet Justine Wilson, who would later become his first wife, and where his reputation as the awkward, hyper-focused outsider began to take shape. But Canada gave him something else as well: perspective. It showed him what it meant to survive on his own, to grind through hardship without the safety net of wealth or comfort. It hardened him, instilled resilience, and forced him to rely on his own wits. These were lessons he would carry into his entrepreneurial ventures, where setbacks and near bankruptcies became recurring battles. At 17, Elon Musk was not yet the billionaire visionary shaking up industries. He was a foreigner with little money, no connections, and a relentless drive to get closer to the heart of innovation. Canada was the first border he crossed, literally and figuratively, but his eyes were already fixed on the United States, the place where he believed anything was possible. This willingness to uproot his life, to walk away from security and face uncertainty with almost reckless courage, is what separates Musk from the countless dreamers who never take action. Where others see borders as barriers, Musk saw them as challenges to be overcome. For him, every crossing was a step closer to his ultimate goal: building the future. And so, at 17, with very little to his name but a head full of ideas and an unyielding hunger, Elon Musk began the journey that would carry him from the dusty streets of Pretoria to the cutting-edge frontiers of technology and space. It was the first bold leap in a lifetime defined by leaps, the dropout gamble. In 1995, Elon Musk stood at a crossroads that would define the trajectory of his entire life. At 24 years old, he had already made the leap from South Africa to Canada, transferred from Queen's University to the University of Pennsylvania, and graduated with degrees in both physics and economics. He had set himself up for what most people would consider a promising and stable future. And to top it off, he had just been accepted into Stanford University's prestigious PhD program in applied physics and materials science. For any ambitious young scholar, Stanford was the dream, a golden ticket into Silicon Valley's academic and technological elite. But Musk had no intention of walking the safe path. In fact, he barely set foot on it. He lasted 2 days. On the surface, the decision sounds reckless, dropping out of one of the world's best universities after just 48 hours. But Musk was looking at a much bigger picture. The internet was exploding into public consciousness. In the mid-1990s, it was clear to a handful of visionaries that the internet would change everything: business, communication, entertainment, and even geopolitics. Musk believed, with near religious conviction, that this was his moment. While most people saw the internet as a novelty, something for email chat rooms or basic websites, Musk saw it as the most transformative force since the printing press. He believed it would create entire new industries, reshape economies, and determine the future of humanity's development. Sitting in a Stanford lab, running experiments and chasing academic publications suddenly felt like wasting time. Musk often described the thought process that pushed him to quit. He asked himself, what are the most important problems that will affect the future of humanity? For him, three answers stood out: space exploration, the internet, and clean energy. The internet was the one immediately within his grasp, and waiting years to finish a PhD meant watching the revolution unfold without him. He wasn't willing to sit on the sidelines. The gamble was enormous. Musk had no money, no safety net, and no guarantee of success. He and his brother Kimball rented a small office in Palo Alto, turning it into both their workplace and their living space. They slept on futons, showered at a local YMCA, and coded day and night. Every dollar they had went back into the business. They couldn't even afford an office phone line at first. If someone called, Musk himself would answer and pretend to be a secretary before transferring the call to Elon. That company would become Zip2, a software startup designed to help newspapers create online city guides, a precursor to services like Google Maps combined with Yelp. In the mid-90s, the idea of newspapers embracing the internet was radical, but Musk was betting on inevitability, and the timing was just right. Dropping out of Stanford after 2 days wasn't about laziness or impatience, it was about refusing to compromise his vision. Where others saw risk, Musk saw opportunity. The safe path, a PhD, a professorship, a comfortable life in academia, held no appeal for him. Musk wasn't interested in studying the future, he wanted to build it. And that decision to gamble everything on the unknown, to trade certainty for possibility, was the first in a series of daring moves that would come to define him. In those 48 hours at Stanford, Musk showed the world, and himself, the type of person he truly was, someone who would rather risk it all chasing an idea than settle for a secure but uninspired existence. The dropout gamble was never really about Stanford. It was about Musk's unwillingness to stand still while the world changed around him. It was a declaration that he was ready to stop preparing and start creating. The birth of Zip2. When Elon Musk dropped out of Stanford after just 2 days, he didn't waste a second wondering if he had made a mistake. Instead, he plunged headfirst into what he believed was the greatest opportunity of his generation, the rise of the internet. The mid-1990s were chaotic, uncharted territory for the digital world. Most people didn't even fully understand what the internet was, let alone how it could transform their lives or businesses. But Musk wasn't most people. He saw a tidal wave coming and wanted to be the one riding it. Together with his younger brother, Kimball Musk, Elon founded a small startup in 1995, Zip2. The idea was deceptively simple but revolutionary for its time: create an online business directory and mapping service that could help traditional media companies like newspapers transition into the digital age. Think of it as a primitive fusion of Google Maps, Yelp, and online Yellow Pages, before any of those things existed. The Musk brothers set up their company in a small rented office in Palo Alto, California, in the heart of Silicon Valley. But it wasn't glamorous. The office doubled as their home. They couldn't afford an apartment, so Elon slept on a beat-up futon in the corner of the office, and Kimball crashed wherever he could. They showered at a nearby YMCA, lived off cheap meals, and poured every ounce of energy into coding, pitching, and refining their product. Musk's role was clear. He was the engineer, the coder, the one who could turn the vision into a functioning platform. He often worked day and night, fueled by coffee, junk food, and sheer determination. Kimball handled more of the business side, talking to potential clients, investors, and partners. Together they embodied the archetype of the scrappy startup founders, two brothers with no safety net, living on the edge, gambling everything on an idea that most people dismissed as nonsense. Their first big break came when they convinced local newspapers that the internet wasn't a passing fad, but the future of publishing. At a time when most editors were clinging desperately to print, the Musk brothers pitched Zip2 as a way for newspapers to modernize online city guides, where readers could not only find articles but also look up local businesses, maps, and services. It was a leap forward, bridging the gap between old media and the digital frontier. Getting traction, however, was anything but easy. Investors were skeptical, the internet was still considered niche, and many dismissed Musk and his brother as dreamers. The brothers faced constant rejection, running out of money, and the ever-present risk of total collapse. But Musk's unrelenting belief in the project kept them pushing forward. He once said that he was willing to work 100 hours a week because even if others worked 40 hours, he could outpace them simply through brute effort. That persistence began to pay off. Zip2 slowly gained clients, attracting attention from bigger players. In 1996, More Davidoff Ventures, a Silicon Valley venture capital firm, invested nearly $3 million in the company. That investment was transformative. It gave Zip2 legitimacy, funding for expansion, and the resources to scale beyond a scrappy two-man operation. With the backing, the company grew rapidly, partnering with major newspapers like the New York Times and the Chicago Tribune. But even with this success, Musk's journey inside Zip2 wasn't easy. Investors often clashed with him, seeing him as too inexperienced and too stubborn. They eventually pushed him out of the CEO role, replacing him with more seasoned executives. For Musk, it was an early lesson in the brutal realities of startup life. Even if you build something from scratch, the people who write the checks often control the game. Still, the company's growth was undeniable. Zip2 went from a cramped office to becoming one of the pioneers of online business directories. By 1999, just 4 years after it began, Compaq bought Zip2 for a staggering $307 million in cash. Elon Musk personally walked away with $22 million from the deal. For a man who had once slept on a futon and showered at the YMCA, it was a life-changing windfall. But for Musk, the money wasn't the real story. Zip2 was proof of concept, proof that he could start with nothing, build something from scratch, and actually win. It gave him the financial foundation and the confidence to take even bigger risks in the future. If Zip2 was his first company, it was also his first launchpad. From that moment forward, Musk wasn't just a dreamer, he was a proven entrepreneur with capital to fuel his increasingly audacious visions. The birth of Zip2 wasn't glamorous, and it certainly wasn't easy. It was forged in sleepless nights, endless rejection, and relentless coding marathons. But it was also where Musk learned the DNA of startup survival: take risks, outwork everyone else, and never stop believing in your vision, even when the rest of the world calls it impossible. Sleeping in the office. When people today picture Elon Musk, they think of billion-dollar companies, rocket launches, and electric cars changing the world. But before all of that, in the mid-1990s, Musk was just another broke entrepreneur trying to survive in Silicon Valley. And survive is the right word, because the early days of Zip2 were less like a business and more like a test of endurance. Musk and his brother Kimball didn't have money for luxuries like an apartment or even regular meals. Their Palo Alto office wasn't just where they worked, it was where they lived. Elon kept a beat-up futon in the corner and a sleeping bag on the floor. When the long coding marathon stretched deep into the night, he would collapse there, sleep for a few hours, and then get right back to work. The office was a home, a laboratory, and a prison all at once. He worked nearly 20 hours a day, 7 days a week. There was no balance, no social life, no hobbies. Musk ate cheap takeout food, lived off coffee and soda, and sacrificed everything: time, comfort, health, for Zip2. While most young people in Silicon Valley chased networking events, parties, or weekend getaways, Musk stayed chained to his desk, writing code, debugging, and refining the product line by line. His reasoning was simple: if everyone else worked 40 hours a week, and he worked 100, then in 4 months, he could achieve what they did in a year. That mathematical obsession with effort became his weapon. Basic survival needs were met with the same frugality. There was no shower in the office, so Musk made the YMCA his daily stop. Every morning after working until dawn, he would grab a towel, head to the local YMCA shower, and then return to the office to start all over again. The image of him dragging himself from a gym locker room to a startup headquarters captures just how far from glamour his life really was at the time. For Musk though, this wasn't suffering. It was strategy. He wasn't looking for comfort. He was looking for speed. Every dollar saved on rent or living expenses was another dollar that could keep the company alive. Every hour not wasted on commuting or sleeping in a real bed was another hour spent building the future. He was willing to compress his personal life into the smallest space possible if it meant Zip2 had a chance to succeed. This kind of sacrifice wasn't just about hard work. It was about psychology. Musk was betting everything on Zip2. If it failed, he had nothing to fall back on. No financial cushion, no family fortune, no plan B. He had taken the classic Silicon Valley gamble, but unlike many who approach startups as an adventure or career step, Musk approached it like war. He once described startups as chewing glass and staring into the abyss. For him, sleeping on the office floor wasn't humiliating. It was survival on the front lines. And this period defined his reputation. People around him began to realize he wasn't like other founders. He wasn't in it for the short-term money or the thrill of entrepreneurship. He was dead serious about creating something that could change industries. That intensity bordering on obsession is what set him apart and what carried him through Zip2's darkest moments when investors were doubtful, newspapers were skeptical, and the entire company was hanging by a thread. Looking back, those office floor nights and YMCA showers weren't just a footnote in Musk's story. They were the crucible. They were proof that he was willing to endure the grind, the discomfort, and the loneliness to push his vision forward. Every sleepless night, every 20-hour day, every cheap meal of takeout wasn't wasted effort. It was investment, not in comfort, not in security, but in the future he was determined to build. This was the Elon Musk before the billions, hungry, exhausted, broke, and unrelenting. Sleeping in the office wasn't a choice, it was the only way forward, and it became the symbol of how far he was willing to go when he decided to bet everything on an idea. First big win. By 1999, after years of sleepless nights, coding marathons, and the kind of sacrifices that would break most people, Elon Musk finally hit his first major breakthrough. Zip2, the scrappy little startup he and his brother Kimball had built out of a cramped office in Palo Alto, was no longer just surviving. It was thriving. And soon, it would become Musk's first big win, catapulting him from a penniless coder who showered at the YMCA to a millionaire with the capital to chase far bigger dreams. The transformation didn't happen overnight. Zip2 had clawed its way forward, convincing skeptical newspapers that the internet was not a passing fad, but the inevitable future. Investors had poured in, executives had been installed, and the company had evolved far beyond the days when Musk slept on the office floor. By the late 90s, Zip2 had partnerships with major publications like the New York Times and the Chicago Tribune. Its software helped newspapers provide online directories, maps, and business listings, early precursors to services we now take for granted, like Google Maps and Yelp. Still, the dot-com landscape was volatile. Startups were booming and burning out at a dizzying pace. Consolidation was inevitable, and big tech companies were circling, looking to acquire smaller players to strengthen their internet strategies. For Zip2, the moment came when Compaq, one of the leading PC manufacturers of the time, expressed interest. Compaq was eager to expand its digital services and saw Zip2 as a valuable piece of that puzzle. In February 1999, the deal was finalized. Compaq acquired Zip2 for a staggering $307 million in cash. For Musk, it was validation on a level he had never experienced before. This wasn't just a startup surviving against the odds, it was a startup winning, cashing out in one of the biggest internet deals of the time. Musk personally walked away with $22 million from the sale. To put that in perspective, just a few years earlier he had been scraping by on cheap food and sleeping in his office, unable to afford even an apartment. Now, at only 27 years old, he was officially a multi-millionaire. But what makes this moment so defining isn't just the money, it's what Musk did next. For most people, a $22 million payout would be the finish line. It would mean financial freedom, early retirement, or a life of comfort. For Musk, it was just the starting point. The sale of Zip2 wasn't an exit, It was fuel, capital, ammunition for the far more ambitious battles he intended to fight. This windfall gave Musk something he had never had before: the freedom to dream bigger without the constant fear of going broke. For the first time, he could take risks, not just with his time and health, but with real financial backing, and he wasted no time. Almost immediately, Musk began thinking about how to use his newfound wealth to tackle what he believed were the most important problems of the future. Within months, he would launch X.com, the online financial services company that would eventually become PayPal. The sale of Zip2 also taught Musk a hard but vital lesson about startups: control is everything. During Zip2's growth, Musk had been pushed aside by investors who believed he was too inexperienced to lead. He was stripped of the CEO title, forced to watch from the sidelines as others managed the company he had built from nothing. Though he profited from the sale, the sting of losing control burned deep. He vowed that in his future ventures, he would fight tooth and nail to remain in charge, no matter how much outside pressure he faced. So while the compact deal was his first big financial victory, it was also a psychological turning point. Musk proved to himself, and to Silicon Valley, that he wasn't just another hopeful entrepreneur. He was someone who could take an idea, execute it, and walk away with millions. More importantly, he now had the war chest to go after the truly audacious visions that had been simmering in his mind since childhood: reshaping finance, revolutionizing energy, and eventually making humanity a multiplanetary species. The sale of Zip2 was Elon Musk's first big win, but more than that, it was the ignition point. With money in his pocket, lessons learned from brutal startup life, and a mind burning with ambition, Musk was ready to play on a much larger stage. The futon in the office was gone, the YMCA showers were behind him, but the hunger to build the future had only grown stronger. The sale of Zip2 gave Musk his first real shot at playing in the big leagues. Armed with over $20 million from the deal, he didn't take time off or splurge on luxury. Instead, he went right back into the fire with an idea that was far ahead of its time: online banking. In 1999, Musk founded X.com, an ambitious startup that aimed to revolutionize how money moved on the internet. It wasn't just about transferring funds, it was about creating a full digital bank when most people still felt nervous typing their credit card numbers online. But bold visions attract turbulence. The financial world didn't take kindly to a newcomer trying to rewrite the rules, and even within his own company, resistance grew. Eventually, X.com merged with a rival company called Confinity, which had built a small but promising money transfer service known as PayPal. That's when the fireworks began. The two teams clashed constantly: different visions, egos, and strategies. Musk wanted X.com to dominate online finance, while others pushed PayPal as the simpler, sharper brand. Heated debates over technical decisions, branding, and leadership nearly tore the company apart. Musk, at one point, was ousted as CEO while he was away on vacation. It was a brutal reminder that even founders weren't safe when investors and boards decided otherwise. Yet, through all the infighting, one thing was undeniable: the product worked. PayPal took off like wildfire, becoming the go-to way for people to send and receive money online, especially on eBay. Customers loved it, growth exploded, and the company fought tooth and nail against fraud, competition, and internal chaos to survive. The PayPal wars weren't just about building a company, they forged a group of future titans. The so-called PayPal Mafia would later go on to shape Silicon Valley, creating giants like YouTube, LinkedIn, and Tesla. And while Musk didn't always get his way during that turbulent period, his fingerprints were all over the revolution that made digital payments mainstream. It was a bruising battle, but one that hardened Musk, sharpened his instincts, and gave him his second massive win. The experience left scars, but it also set the stage for even bigger, riskier dreams. The PayPal exit. After years of sleepless nights, boardroom battles, and navigating the treacherous waters of early online banking, Elon Musk and his team finally reached the moment every startup founder dreams of: a successful exit. In 2002, eBay acquired PayPal for a staggering $1.5 billion in stock, solidifying Musk's position as one of Silicon Valley's most prominent young entrepreneurs. For Musk, this wasn't just a financial victory, it was validation that his vision of online financial systems could not only survive, but dominate a rapidly growing digital world. Musk personally walked away with roughly $180 million, a fortune that instantly elevated him from a scrappy entrepreneur into a global figure with the capital to pursue audacious, world-changing ideas. The money was life-altering, but for someone like Musk, it was less a reward than a tool, a launchpad for even more ambitious dreams. He didn't buy luxury cars or yachts, he reinvested almost every cent into ventures that aimed to reshape entire industries. PayPal's success also marked the end of one era and the beginning of another. Musk had learned critical lessons about risk, leadership, and resilience. He had endured the constant push and pull of investors, endured internal power struggles, and survived the chaos of scaling a revolutionary product. He saw firsthand how innovation clashed with bureaucracy, how speed and vision often conflicted with established processes, and how crucial it was to take bold bets at the right time. But the sale of PayPal wasn't the pinnacle, it was the threshold. Musk's ambitions had always stretched far beyond online banking. With the financial foundation now in place, he could finally chase the ideas that had haunted him since childhood. Colonizing Mars, accelerating humanity's transition to sustainable energy, and transforming transportation on Earth and in space. In many ways, the PayPal exit was Musk's rite of passage. It was proof that he could take an idea, build it from scratch under extreme pressure, and turn it into a product and a company that changed the world. More importantly, it showed him the power of capital, how money could become a tool for innovation rather than a goal in itself. The world saw him as the young tech millionaire, a symbol of Silicon Valley success. Musk saw something far bigger: freedom. Freedom to take the next leap, to challenge industries that seemed impossible to disrupt, and to pursue ventures that others would call reckless or insane. The sale of PayPal was the end of one chapter, but in Musk's mind, the real game was only beginning. Armed with vision, experience, and a substantial fortune, Musk was ready to tackle the problems no one else dared to face: rockets that could reach space affordably, electric cars that could replace gasoline vehicles, and a future where humanity could extend beyond the confines of Earth itself. PayPal had given him the capital, now it was time to dream on a planetary scale. All in on the future. Most people, after selling a company for hundreds of millions, would choose comfort. They would buy a mansion, exotic cars, and enjoy a life free from financial worry. Elon Musk did the exact opposite. Within months of the PayPal sale in 2002, he wasn't interested in luxury. He was thinking bigger, far bigger. He decided to bet nearly everything he had on the future itself. Musk's mind was consumed by three grand visions: space exploration, sustainable energy, and electric vehicles. Each was audacious, high risk, and to most observers, borderline impossible. But Musk saw opportunity where others saw impossibility. He didn't want incremental progress, he wanted transformation. SpaceX. Musk poured over $100 million of his own money into a private space venture that aimed to reduce the cost of spaceflight and eventually make humans a multi-planetary species. Conventional aerospace experts scoffed, saying a private individual could never compete with government-funded giants like NASA. Musk ignored them. He studied rocket engineering obsessively, hired a small team of engineers, and began designing the Falcon rockets from the ground up. Every dollar was a bet that private enterprise could democratize space exploration. Tesla Motors. Musk invested in Tesla, an electric car company with a vision of replacing gas-powered vehicles with high-performance electric alternatives. At the time, electric cars were considered toys for the environmentally obsessed, impractical and slow. Musk saw their potential to reshape transportation entirely. He joined as an investor and chairman, later taking the CEO role to ensure the company followed his vision, spending tens of millions of his own money to keep the company afloat during its most critical periods. SolarCity. Musk also invested in SolarCity, a solar energy company founded by his cousins, aiming to accelerate the adoption of clean energy solutions. Musk recognized that solving climate change required more than building cars. It required transforming the way humans produce and consume energy. His investment went far beyond money. He provided guidance, strategy, and a relentless push toward scalable, practical solutions. By reinvesting nearly all his PayPal fortune into these ventures, Musk accepted extraordinary risk. He had no safety net. If any one of these companies failed, he could have lost everything: his wealth, his credibility, and the freedom that had just been earned. Friends and family warned him. Investors doubted him. Yet Musk's vision of the future outweighed any fear of failure. This decision illustrated a defining trait. Musk wasn't motivated by wealth or comfort. He was motivated by impact, by legacy, and by the idea that humanity could advance faster if he was willing to risk everything to push it forward. While most people dream, Musk was willing to stake his fortune on realizing those dreams. All in on the future wasn't just a choice, it was a declaration. Musk wasn't just building companies, he was building a roadmap for a future he wanted to live in. Rockets, cars, and solar energy were just the tools. His real investment was in humanity's potential, and he was willing to bet everything he had to see it realized. Tesla quote, struggles. When Elon Musk decided to go all in on the future, he wasn't just investing money, he was taking on battles that seemed impossible to win. Tesla Motors, his electric car venture, quickly became the epitome of high-risk, high-stress entrepreneurship. In the mid-2000s, electric vehicles, EVs, were widely dismissed as impractical novelties. Skeptics called them slow, expensive, and inferior to gasoline cars. The idea that an electric car could compete with luxury performance vehicles seemed laughable. Yet, Musk refused to be deterred. From the beginning, Tesla faced what Musk himself would later call production hell. Designing the Roadster, Tesla's first production car, was a nightmare of engineering, logistics, and supply chain chaos. The company was building something no one else had managed to build at scale, a fully electric sports car that could rival gas-powered counterparts in speed, handling, and reliability. Every step required inventing solutions on the fly, often under severe time and financial pressure. By 2008, Tesla teetered on the edge of bankruptcy. The financial strain was immense. Musk had poured tens of millions of his own money into the company, even taking personal loans against his PayPal fortune to keep the lights on. Vendors threatened to cut supplies, employees worked grueling hours, and deadlines were constantly missed. Investors were impatient, press critics were brutal, and the media often painted Musk as a reckless risk-taker doomed to fail. Yet Musk's leadership style, intense as it was, kept the company alive. He slept on the factory floor, attended daily engineering reviews, and pushed his team to meet impossible targets. The pressure was relentless, and burnout was common, but Musk's unyielding vision inspired loyalty and fear. He demanded perfection, often clashing with executives and engineers, but it was this intensity that turned Tesla's chaos into results. Public skepticism was another constant battle. Critics argued that EVs couldn't compete with internal combustion engines, that lithium-ion batteries were too dangerous or too expensive, and that Tesla would collapse under its own ambition. Yet Musk used criticism as fuel rather than a deterrent. Every skeptical article, every financial warning, every investor doubt strengthened his determination to prove the world wrong. The company's survival hinged on a combination of innovation, perseverance, and sheer audacity. Tesla had to reinvent manufacturing processes, source components no one else could reliably supply, and educate the market on why electric cars were not only viable but superior in performance and environmental impact. Musk's willingness to take personal financial risks, investing more of his own money when creditors threatened to pull out, was crucial. Without him betting everything, Tesla would have failed long before the Roadster even hit the streets. By the end of this period, Tesla had not only survived, but laid the foundation for something far greater, the Model S. a vehicle that would finally silence critics and prove that electric cars could compete at the highest levels of performance, luxury, and desirability. But the journey through production hell, near bankruptcy, and relentless criticism shaped Musk as much as it shaped Tesla. It taught him lessons about resilience, risk management, and the brutal reality of disrupting an industry entrenched in old ways. Tesla's struggles weren't just a story of a company facing financial peril. They were a testament to Musk's unique brand of leadership. He risked everything, endured criticism that would have broken most people, and refused to compromise on his vision. In the end, it wasn't just about building cars, it was about proving that the impossible could become inevitable if you were willing to pay the price. SpaceX almost fails. While Tesla was fighting to survive on Earth, Elon Musk was simultaneously waging war in the void of space. In 2002, he had poured over $100 million of his own money into SpaceX, a company many considered a fool's errand, a private venture aiming to make rockets affordable and eventually send humans to Mars. Government agencies had dominated space for decades, and conventional wisdom said no private company could ever compete. But Musk didn't care about skepticism, he cared about results. From the outset, the odds were stacked against him. Designing and building rockets is one of the most complex engineering challenges imaginable. Every system, propulsion, fuel, guidance, structural integrity had to work perfectly, or the rocket would explode. Musk assembled a small, dedicated team, often working shoulder to shoulder in cramped offices and warehouses, and pushed them to innovate faster than any aerospace company had ever attempted. By 2006, SpaceX was ready for its first launch, the Falcon 1, a small two-stage rocket intended to prove the viability of private spaceflight. But the first launch ended in failure. The rocket lifted off but suffered engine problems and crashed into the ocean. Musk remained calm publicly, but privately, the stakes were existential. He had invested nearly all of his personal fortune. A second attempt in 2007 ended in another failure, and by the third launch, later that year, the company was teetering on the edge of bankruptcy. Employees described the atmosphere as tense, bordering on desperate. Musk personally confronted the reality that if the third Falcon 1 launch failed, SpaceX would collapse, and with it, the dream of private spaceflight he had carried since childhood. Many engineers and investors began to doubt whether the company could survive. The pressure was immense. Musk had risked every dollar from PayPal, every ounce of credibility on these launches. Failure wasn't just a setback, it would mean financial ruin and public embarrassment. The third launch, however, marked a turning point. In September 2008, Falcon 1 finally achieved orbit, making SpaceX the first privately developed liquid-fueled rocket to reach orbit. The success was hard-earned, the result of 3 years of relentless iteration, learning from failures, and refusing to compromise on quality or ambition. Musk's team had dissected every previous failure, redesigned critical components, and pushed the limits of what a small startup could achieve. This near-death experience left a lasting impact on Musk and SpaceX. He learned that failure is inevitable when pushing boundaries, but that perseverance, rapid iteration, and willingness to bet everything can turn near disaster into historic success. Investors and NASA began to take notice, and soon SpaceX secured contracts to deliver cargo to the International Space Station, a milestone that legitimized private spaceflight for the first time. SpaceX almost fails isn't just a statement about rockets, it's a story about audacity, risk, and vision under pressure. Musk had wagered his fortune, his credibility, and his dream of colonizing Mars, and the outcome could have ended in total collapse. Instead, the third rocket soared into orbit, proving that what most people deemed impossible could become reality through sheer determination and relentless innovation. From that moment, SpaceX was no longer just a startup, it was a serious contender in aerospace, setting the stage for reusable rockets, interplanetary ambitions, and the audacious goal of making humanity a multi-planetary species. Musk had stared failure in the face 3 times, and emerged not just unbroken, but stronger, more resolute, and more determined than ever. The turning point. By the fall of 2008, Elon Musk was staring down a nightmare scenario. Most entrepreneurs never face 2 of his companies. Tesla and SpaceX were simultaneously on the brink of collapse. Tesla was months away from running out of cash, struggling to bring the Roadster into full production, while SpaceX had just endured 3 failed rocket launches that had nearly bankrupted the company. The stakes could not have been higher. It was a moment that would define Musk's career, the turning point where vision met survival and audacity met reality. For SpaceX, the 4th launch of the Falcon 1 rocket was do or die. Failure wasn't an option. Musk had invested virtually all of his PayPal fortune into the company, and his team had worked tirelessly through sleepless nights, debugging, redesigning, and refining every detail of the rocket. The pressure was almost unbearable. On September 28, 2008, Falcon 1 finally lifted off successfully, reaching orbit for the first time. It was a quiet moment for the world, but for Musk and his small team, it was a seismic victory. After 3 consecutive failures, the rocket's success proved not just the technical feasibility of private spaceflight, but also validated Musk's relentless approach to high-risk ventures. It immediately caught the attention of NASA, which awarded SpaceX a $1.6 billion contract to deliver cargo to the International Space Station. The contract didn't just save SpaceX, it propelled the company into legitimacy, credibility, and long-term viability. Meanwhile, Tesla was in its own fight for survival. Production delays and ballooning costs threatened to sink the company entirely. Musk had already poured millions of his own money into the Roadster project, and was facing skeptical investors and mounting press criticism. Yet the credibility earned from SpaceX's breakthrough indirectly boosted Tesla. Investors began to see Musk not just as a dreamer, but as a visionary capable of turning impossible ideas into tangible success. The SpaceX win gave Musk the leverage and confidence to secure additional funding to keep Tesla afloat. This turning point was more than a single launch or a single contract. It was validation of Musk's relentless philosophy: bet everything on the future, endure the grind, and keep iterating through failure until success arrives. The 4th Falcon 1 launch didn't just save SpaceX, it secured Musk's ability to pursue his larger, intertwined ambitions of sustainable energy and interplanetary exploration. Musk himself later reflected that period as the ultimate test of endurance, strategy, and faith in his own vision. He had gambled everything multiple times, faced near-certain failure, and pushed his team to the limits of human endurance. The victory wasn't just technical, it was existential. It proved that the impossible could be achieved with obsession, sacrifice, and relentless focus. From that moment forward, both companies entered a new phase. SpaceX became a serious contender in aerospace, developing the Falcon 9 and Dragon spacecraft, while Tesla gained the credibility and financial runway to scale beyond the Roadster, eventually producing the Model S, Model X, and later mass-market vehicles like the Model 3. Musk's audacious gamble had worked, not because it was safe or predictable, but because he refused to compromise on his vision. The turning point wasn't just a success story, it was the proof that Elon Musk's approach, working through unimaginable pressure, risking everything and defying conventional wisdom, could rewrite the rules of entire industries. From near bankruptcy to orbital achievement, this was the moment when Musk's future truly began. Redefining industries. By the early 2010s, Elon Musk had transitioned from a successful tech entrepreneur to a serial industry disruptor. The wins at SpaceX and Tesla had proven one undeniable truth: vision paired with relentless persistence could reshape entire industries that others believed were unchangeable. Musk wasn't just building companies, he was rewriting the rules of transportation, space, and energy. Transportation. Tesla's journey from the niche roadster to mass-market vehicles, like the Model S, Model X and Model 3, proved that electric cars could compete with and surpass traditional gasoline vehicles. Critics who once laughed at EVs were now watching as Tesla's cars achieved record ranges, unmatched acceleration and revolutionary safety features. Musk's insistence on vertically integrating production, innovating battery technology, and designing sleek, desirable cars forced legacy automakers to pivot toward electric vehicles. Industries that had been stagnant for decades were suddenly in upheaval. SpaceX went from a near-bankrupt startup to a global aerospace powerhouse. By pioneering reusable rockets, Musk drastically reduced the cost of space travel, proving that private enterprise could achieve what governments had monopolized for decades. The Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy rockets, alongside the Dragon spacecraft, transformed commercial spaceflight, enabling not just cargo deliveries to the ISS, but also private astronaut missions. Musk's audacious Mars ambitions, once dismissed as science fiction, became a strategic roadmap for humanity's expansion beyond Earth. Energy. Through Tesla Energy and Solar City, Musk demonstrated that sustainable energy wasn't just environmentally desirable, it was technologically feasible and economically competitive. Solar panels, Powerwall batteries, and the development of large-scale energy storage solutions challenged traditional utilities and energy providers. Musk's vision linked clean energy directly to transportation, creating an ecosystem where EVs and solar energy could power a sustainable future. What made Musk's impact unique wasn't just the technical innovation, it was the sheer persistence behind it. Each industry he touched had enormous inertia, entrenched incumbents, regulatory hurdles, skeptical consumers, and cultural resistance. Musk's formula was consistent: identify a massive problem, invest heavily in your own vision, push through failure after failure, and iterate until the impossible became inevitable. His work demonstrated that industries were not immutable, they could bend, evolve, and even be rewritten if one person or one company was willing to endure more risk and work harder than anyone else. By redefining transportation, space, and energy, Musk didn't just disrupt markets, he reshaped expectations. He forced entire industries to innovate faster, think bigger, and adopt technologies they would have otherwise ignored for decades. His companies became proof that audacious goals combined with relentless execution could turn science fiction into reality. In the end, redefining industries wasn't just about Tesla, SpaceX, or Solar City. It was about proving a fundamental principle: visionaries who are willing to risk everything, endure extreme failure, and persist against all odds can alter the trajectory of human progress itself. Musk's story became a blueprint for innovation, showing that industries, no matter how entrenched, could be transformed by sheer willpower, ingenuity, and relentless dedication. From idea to empire. Looking back on Elon Musk's journey, it becomes clear that his empire, from Zip2 to PayPal, Tesla, SpaceX, and beyond, wasn't built solely on money, connections, or luck. The foundation was far simpler, yet far more powerful: an idea, an unshakable belief, and a refusal to quit. Every company Musk touched, every risk he took, was fueled not by the desire for wealth alone, but by the vision of what the future could be, and the certainty that he had to make it real. It started in South Africa, with a curious boy fascinated by computers and the limitless possibilities of technology. That curiosity became action when he coded and sold his first video game at age 12. By the time he left for North America, Musk was already chasing ideas larger than himself, willing to leave home and security behind in search of opportunities to create something new. Zip2 taught him the brutal realities of building a company from nothing: sleepless nights, investor conflicts, and the sheer grind of convincing the world that an idea was worth pursuing. PayPal reinforced another lesson: risk everything, fight internal battles, and survive intense pressure while keeping your eyes on the ultimate goal. When the eBay sale turned Musk into a millionaire, most would have stopped, but he saw capital not as a reward but as fuel for even bigger ambitions. SpaceX, Tesla, and Solar City became the testing grounds for his philosophy. Near bankruptcy, production hell, and multiple failures didn't stop him. They hardened him. Musk bet everything repeatedly, often risking his own fortune, sanity, and reputation to turn visions into reality. His persistence, often bordering on obsession, became the engine driving innovation. Where others saw impossibility, Musk saw a challenge to conquer, a puzzle to solve, a future to create. The thread running through every venture is unmistakable. Ideas first, money second. Wealth was always a tool, not the end goal. Belief was the constant belief that humanity could explore space, drive clean cars, and transition to sustainable energy. And the refusal to quit, that was the multiplier. Musk endured failures that would have sunk most people, and in doing so, he proved that tenacity can turn audacious visions into global empires. From a small office in Palo Alto to rockets orbiting the Earth, from coding a simple video game to redefining entire industries, Musk's story is a testament to the power of ideas combined with relentless action. Empires are often measured in profits or market cap, but Musk's empire is measured by impact, innovation, and the audacity to pursue the impossible. In the end, the lesson is clear. Money can enable dreams, but it cannot create them. Only belief, persistence, and the courage to act on a vision, no matter how far-fetched, can turn an idea into an empire. Elon Musk's journey is proof that empires are built not by those who seek safety, but by those who refuse to quit. Wrap up. Elon Musk's journey shows that no empire starts with money. It starts with one person crazy enough to believe their idea matters. Encourage viewers to subscribe for more founder stories.